following in the pioneering footsteps of New Beacon Books, Alison and Busby, and Bogle Louverture, Dr. Verna Wilkins carved out an essential new lane for children of colour in literature. In 1987, the former educated added her mighty voice to the fight for cultural equality, founding Tamarind Books to address the balance in publishing for children of colour. Born in Grenada, Verna's head teacher father was instrumental in introducing Caribbean history to a curriculum dominated by Britain's past. She said, "He told us stories relevant to our lives, stories from Africa and the Caribbean, stories that included people like us. He worked hard to give his children and his pupils self-worth." When she couldn't find any books with black and brown characters while raising her children in London in the 1980s, she launched Tamarind Books from a kitchen table. How classic is that? The author of 30 picture books and 8 biographies. Her books have featured on BBC children's TV programmes, the National Curriculum Reading List, and chosen among Children's Books of the Year. An internationally acclaimed speaker, which you will hear tonight. She was elected as Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature in 2021 and was awarded an honorary degree of Doctors of Letters by Birmingham Newman University for championing children's literature and as an educator. Verna's many awards include the British Book Industry Decibel Award for Multicultural Publishing, the European Federation of Women Business Owners Award, and a Successful Business and Pioneer Windrush Award. Welcome, Verna. So lovely to see you. You were born and grew up in Grenada, where you were surrounded by black lawyers, black teachers, black doctors, and your father, a head teacher, as I mentioned, was always clear you were of African origin. So how did he and his identity affirmation influence you?
I only realized that how important the input from my father, how it affected me as an adult. I wasn't aware of it when I was young, but as I went through with the publishing and doing things, I realized. Because he told us we were colonized, so I grew up with Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, and Goldilocks, and I thought they were amazing. And I was a child. In school, we had school books with white children. So my whole early development and learning across the board was in a social vacuum, because there were no characters that looked like us or were like us. And even our history, it was about, William the Conqueror 1066 and all that. I knew more about that. Our poetry was about golden daffodils, which we were surrounded with hibiscus and oleander and bougainvillea, a riot of colors outside. And we were talking about golden daffodils and sweet peas, which was in the flora of England. And even living in our homes, I was reading about how many hundredweight of, for my son, maths and so, how many hundredweight of coal would Mrs. Smith need to keep her indoor fires? It's 90 degrees in the shed. And I'm reading about people keeping indoor fires going. So can you see how my early experience? But what my father did was he explained. He said, you see, you're African, you're of African origin, but you're thousands of miles away from your origin. You have an English name, you're speaking English, and you're reading in another way. Let that work for you. Make that your imagination. Make it work for you, because you got this, you got us, you got it, and then you got that to add on. So make it work for you. And did you see that? It's only later I could see how much sense he made. That's why I can write. That's why my imagination was so brave. So the downside was okay, but the upside was it made me a very innovative, exuberant writer.
And when you arrived in Britain as a grown-up, you were an educator. So how much of a culture shock was it for you? Because at that time, and still to some degree now, there weren't that many black teachers present.
No. I went into a local, I wasn't living in London at the time, and I was in Camberley, Surrey, and I got a job as a lecturer in business English and the world of work at the local college, Farnborough Technical College. And I'd go in on the first day of term, dressed as I am, you know, waiting for the students to come in. And because it was a white area, and it was very hierarchical, so the army students in all the shop, Camberley, Ascot, that sort of area, the students came in and they'll come in and say to me, "Where's the lecturer?" Mm-hmm. And that was very difficult. And I had to deal with that. I couldn't then internalize it and say anything. So I used to have to make up, you know, a defense mechanism almost. So I remember one lot came in and said, "Where's the lecturer?" And I said, "This is an exam year. I have very, very high standards. And you've already beginning to fail by not being able to see the lecturer. I don't put up with that." I mean, you can't identify. So shall we do some work? And do you know, I had to develop those skills for coping with these kids because they were 16-year-olds. They weren't kids, and some of them were quite naughty. But we had high rates of success at the end of each of my years, which was great. But what shook me was my kids were being educated in that system where those children had learned what they had learned. And by then I had children, I had 2 sons educated in the same environment. So I had to then, how are my children dealing with it? Because these kids are not bad kids, they're just, their actions are racist, but they, you know, they need to be, something needs to happen. And that's when I started looking at how children learn and to get. So I went to the teachers. I went to the local schools as a teacher. I said, "Look, if I write a book or if I do some learning material, how would you use it in the classroom? How do you choose books for schools? When do you read books? What do you use them for?" And do you know, those teachers were amazing. Some of them gave me lists of things, common experiences. All children lose their teeth, all children have birthdays, all children have school, the first day of school and so. And make them laugh and make them want to turn the page. I did all of that. And one of the books, and I must tell you about Dave and the Tooth Fairy, I wrote that book eventually, and Dave and the Tooth Fairy is still out there.
I'm going to talk about that actually.
I'm going to come to that. You come to that because that was the teachers. Do this, make them laugh, give them a journey. So the Tooth Fairy flies around the world, and yeah. So my teaching was from teachers who were teaching children. What I did was use all those educational things, and they all had black protagonists and black families, positively, good quality represented. And that's the success of Tamarind.
Well, there's even more to it than that. Mm-hmm. So I want to come back. You mentioned your sons.
My 2 sons.
Yes. So you said that, you know, as a teacher, as a lecturer, as an educator, publishing or running the business wasn't on your to-do list.
It wasn't on my to-do list. Publishing wasn't on my to-do list. I must tell you this.
Right, but then I think that you said something incredibly telling about your motivation, which was, I didn't know I wasn't good enough until I had children in Britain and was exposed to the low expectations of them. Mm-hmm. And I think that story about your son, your older son, coming from school, I think I'd rather me sort of even prompting
Which
that.
one
That the
was
one
that?
around the cover.
The
book.
project.
Yes, the project that he
Yes.
was. Yeah, this is me.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had two boys. The older son was born reading. He learned to read at birth. I don't know how. He did. He just loved books, he loved reading. And he went to school being able to read. And I wasn't educated in England. I thought you just took them to the door and tucked them in with everybody else. I wasn't going to say to the teacher, by the way, he can read. I thought he can't write, he can't hold a pencil, he can't lace his shoes, he can't there isn't anything all he can do is read, and there's a lot he has to learn. So I just brought him in. She never found out that he could read. So his boredom with her trying to do phonics when he was reading, he would get up and do around. So she started to say, and he was one of the few black children in the school, so she had to discipline him. But he got there, and they did a project, and it was a This Is Me project. And you had to make up a little notebook about yourself, and you could put down your achievements. Well, he couldn't write because he couldn't write, he could just read.
How old was he? 5 at the time?
Eh?
How old was he at the time?
He was rising 5.
Mm.
And he had a circle on the cover, and he had his face. And it was pinky, peachy skin color, white skin. And I said, is this your project? And he said, yes. I said, is this you? And he said, this is me. I write it, my name myself. He said, pointing to some hieroglyphics, And I said, okay, but are you that color? Because my inside was my heart. I said, but are you that color? And he said, no. A 5-year-old condescending, but why are you asking me a stupid question? No, I'm not that color. I said, well, not to worry. When we get home, I got a brown color, and we'll color you in right color, and then it'll be really you. He took it back from me, and he said, it has to be that color, Mom. It's for a book. And that scared me. I had no choice then. I had to do something. And that's when I went to the teachers, because I realized the teachers didn't expect much of him, and then this thing came up. So I started writing. And I didn't know how to do it. I had to learn how to write. I didn't have any aspirations to be an author or a publisher. So I had to learn all those things. But I knew there were teachers out there that I could turn to. So I turned to the teachers, and I got on with it.
It's so funny because it reminds me, this is like obviously in the 80s, and when you think about that time, it so mirrors what was going on in cinema, because if you saw, one thing you also was aware of is that if and when a black and brown character did appear in a children's book, they were usually the best friend. And we know what happened in films. If you were the best friend of the white main protagonist, he lasted about 5 minutes. So, I want to quote Margaret Busby, who couldn't make it today. And I approached a few people just to talk about your impact. And Margaret, who's a very, very obviously good friend and co-ally and co-conspirator, Verna should be reminded, so I've been told to tell you this, Verna should be reminded of the impact her hard work over the years has had, particularly in setting up Tamarind Books in 1987, and we'll talk a bit more about that, before which there was quite a void in the representation of children of colour in books. And I say this notwithstanding the early interventions of black-led publishing companies, like I mentioned earlier. She is aware, Verna, is aware of the necessity to empower young minds and the belief that they can be included in every aspect of the book-making process. And that's from Margaret Busby, one of Britain's youngest publishers when she first entered the industry, and Britain's first black female publisher. So you're nodding anyway, and everything else in relation to that. So we'll come back to your legacy later on. But following on from that, this testimony from Margaret feels really important because 11 years ago, while you've been interviewed by Random House online, you said, "I didn't feel powerful enough to do anything or say anything." So when all this was happening, when you noticed, hang on, that absence, what's going on, what's unavailable for my children, but yet you ended up successfully setting up a book publishing company, selling hundreds of thousands of books.
Yes.
And also adding, I am an author to your, this is not on my to-do list,
Yes.
because you wrote the majority of
The first
phrase, yes.
I wrote them myself because I was being guided by the teachers. So I went to them and I said, right, we're doing a birthday. All children have birthdays. What will it be? And just, and she said, well, it would be we could use it with counting, birthdays and counting, and how it could thread in. I was working it into the curriculum because the teachers have a captive audience. They've got a captive audience, and if they have something they could work into the curriculum with black protagonists being the heroes in those books, that's amazing. It's not just telling a story with a black person. It is actually a tool for the teachers, and that was the power. And if anybody is interested in listening, get in there, make it work within the system, and the teachers will help. And you can get examples. I didn't know what I was doing when I had to go to the bookshops. There weren't any books in there, so the book. There weren't any books in the library for black children. There weren't books, very few books in schools for the children. So, there is a market, but where are these children that we're writing for? There are hundreds of thousands of them sitting in classrooms across the country. So go there. Get the information from where they are, where they're sitting, and the people in charge of them. And believe you me, it works. It really works.
But also the thing is that distribution is always an issue, and it's still an issue now, particularly for inclusive publishers. And also I remember you being told by booksellers that we've tried selling these books, they don't work, that was it.
What happened was, when I did the first few books, I had to set up a limited company as well, which I had to learn to do. And I had to there's not a lot to it. Company's House is very good. So I set up this company, and I got an illustrator on board, and I printed the books in England and took them to the bookshop. I had to sell them. I'd written the book, I got an illustrator, I put it together, had it printed, paid for it, and then went to this bookshop. And she thought I was the rep, because she knows that it's reps that come to the shop selling books. So when I asked to see the buyer, she said, "Are you from Tamarind?" Because I'd sent some previous stuff. And I said yes, and she said, okay. She got the buyer, and he thought I was the rep. And he just said, oh, well, these books don't sell. We took a few, and it just did. So I said, why do you mean? Well, he said, well, people didn't come in to buy them. White parents weren't going there looking for books with black children. And the black parents weren't going in because there was no visibility around in the shop windows or anywhere where they're going to be able to find these books, so why would they go in? So we had this double whammy. So I realized that Tamarind had to become a publishing company and do the distribution. So we found out, you want to do that? Found out how to distribute these books. I got 3,000 books in the garage.
But also you had to take, again, if it just I don't know if anyone watches Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, because straight away what you're hearing, isn't it, about the classic entrepreneurial route, isn't it? Kitchen table, the fact that, constant problem solving,
yes.
And the fact that you, and also direct to consumer, D2C, direct to consumer. So you bypassed all the traditional routes, you went direct to consumer, you listened to them, you didn't presume who the writer was, and then straight away you knew you've got the captive audience and there's a need, But you still had to do multiple jobs to print the books because they were picture books for children,
Yes.
and they were full colour, which is not cheap.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so
I did. Yes.
you and your husband, isn't it? Your partner at the time.
Sorry?
Your partner was involved in, you had a sort of cottage industry at home.
Yes, we did it, and yes, we did a lot. We used the garage a lot, and did a lot of stuff. But then I had to go and sell these books because the bookshops weren't buying them. The library suppliers didn't know how to get hold of them, and they weren't buying them. Oh dear. So Tamarind became a publishing company, and then I had to sell these books. Well, I had to find a marketplace. And then I found the Black Hair and Beauty Show. And that was amazing. Because you go there to buy hair and beauty, not books. So I took a stall in the hair and beauty show in Ali Pali and decided to sell books. The first year people were saying, books? And they were coming to look because a lot of the black people at the Black Hair and Beauty Show are black. And they were coming. But what was absolutely amazing was that the black children that came in with their moms, you looked at those children's faces. I still feel emotional about it, and it happened in the 80s. They'd say, look, because they've seen themselves. There was a rack of books, and they all had black people, beautifully illustrated, with families and so, as heroes in their own stories. All so many, but they didn't see it in school, they didn't see it in the bookshop, they didn't see it in the libraries, they didn't see, and it's not like that. So the mothers used to come every year, and one year Ian Wright came with his brood, and his children let go of him at the door because all the celebrities used to come to the Black Hair and Beauty Show. And the kid ran up and said, Mom, come and see this. Dad, come and see this. And Ian came over and he said, wow, okay, give them what they want and give me the bill. Dan Abbott came in and bought. So people, all the celebrities were coming in and buying the books, and they said, you don't see these in bookshops. So we had to find a marketplace. So that's where we went to educational conferences, we went to the Toy and Hobby Fair, we went to the Black Teachers Conference, we went to teachers' conferences, we went to the NASUWT conference. And the NASUWT were amazing because they sponsored 6 books. At one stage they were saying, no, what is this? And we booked a place at the conference, and then they said, look, we'll sponsor some of these books because they're needed, because multiculturalism was still being bandied about. But the supply, a decent supply, was not available. So then black female publisher it'll sell a few magazines and papers because it's an unusual story. The tail is wagging the dog here. So we were going, they asked me, Woman's Hour asked me to do an interview. And she said, we'd like to talk about this publishing. Well, I set up a publishing company. I had no clue what a publisher was. I was selling books, I was writing them. The publishers, so I went to Hodder. I thought, I have to find out, I can't go on the radio talking about publishing and I don't know what a publisher is. So I went to Hodder. Right? Can I speak to the publisher? And he said, yes. I went to see David. And I said, no, what's a publisher? What do you do? I write books. I sort out, I sell them. I go to the shops. I liaise with it. I have them printed and they're all in my garage. Now, what is a publisher? And he said, yes, well. What is a publisher? You see? And years later, when my sons grew up a little bit and they became a bit cheeky, we were being interviewed by Woman's Hour, and Jenny Murray was in charge then. And she said to me, I brought my son along to the interview, and she said, what do you think about your mother being a publisher? She was teaching down at the Tech, and now she's a publisher. He said, my mother is completely unfettered by reality. So I thought, no, I've got my real freedom. My children think I'm unfettered by reality, so I don't have, I don't have to be a good mom anymore. I could be a good publisher. But what is publishing, and what does a publisher do? They just employ people, and it's about risk and money. That's it.
Or risk aversion.
And risk aversion. But it's a lovely label. People are very impressed if you tell them you're a publisher.
But it's interesting because by not having a definition, maybe that was good for you.
It was good, yes, and it was good. And I didn't set out. I had to be one, but I didn't.
So you created your version.
Yeah, and I had no pride about it. I didn't know what it was anyway to be proud about. It was an experience.
I want to come to Tamarin's motto: "Children should be seen," without the traditional end part.
Yes.
And you were saying if they don't see themselves, they don't learn to belong. And one set of children qualifying to be in the picture, in picture books, also means that you have those who are excluded, who don't grow up in a balanced fashion.
Yeah.
So how did your sons benefit from your vision? Because in a way, your sons were the prompt for this, really.
Yes. They knew that they were my inspiration. I had to get information from them, and they're very good. And children can be critics. And the first book I wrote was about the stories that I saw Britain that included black children, the few. The little black boys were riding fast down the road. They were very, very overactive, and I wanted a more of a gentleness. So my son had a cat called Lottie, and I said I'll use that as one of my early books, one of my bird books, and it was Mike and Lottie, and he had this cat. And he could see himself being represented, and him and his cat. And I told the real story was that he loved cats, never mind cats. He liked lions, he liked the cat species. And when he was very little, he wanted an ocelot because they could go at 80 miles, they could run very fast. So he wanted an ocelot. So he discussed having an ocelot with his father, who didn't like to tell him that was very stupid. So he said, well, let's go to the zoo then and look at the cats in the zoo. And I took off to the RSPCA place and got him a little tabby. So he called this little tabby, a very sad little freebie tabby, he called it Ocelot. And then he felt a bit silly going outside and saying, come here, Ocelot. So he called it Lottie instead. And there was the rhyme and the repetition that the teachers were asking me to put in the books to give the children, put similar words together and put rhyme and repetition. And he said, and the book I wrote was, I really wanted an ocelot, but I do like Lottie a lot. Oh. So they had their repetition, the OT repetition, the rhyme, they could guess the next word, they could see part. The teachers told me to put those in, and there was Mike and Lottie. So everything was slotting into place with the children and the words and the technique and am I making sense, by the way? Oh, good.
And the poetics of it. I mean,
and
the thing
poet,
is,
yes.
and because you're repositioning our understanding of masculinity in a way, isn't it? Because and the whole thing about adultification.
Yes.
You must weren't thinking about it at the time, but when you think about the debate that's on at the moment about adolescence, that program and toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity.
But I want to come to some of the books that you published and that you wrote as well. You wrote 2 of the best known titles published by Tamarin Books imprint: The Life of Stephen Lawrence for example.
Yes,
and Dave and the Tooth Fairy, which you see the beautiful. These photographs are from Margaret Busby, by the way. I asked her to send some through. She sent me so many, so I did a selection here. And we'll talk a bit about the book here. Stephen Lawrence's book came out in 2001, and Dave and the Tooth Fairy 1993, which featured a black tooth fairy. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that. And it sold, I believe, was it more than 200,000 in its first edition?
Dave and the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yes.
In its first edition.
Yes.
Used across the curriculum. So I know there's a lot that went on behind the scenes, I would imagine. So why do you think it was so successful? I mean, with children, period.
Yes.
It
was popular. Again, the common experience of losing your teeth and getting them back. The Tooth Fairy is black, drop dead gorgeous, and computer literate. Because you need satellite navigation if you're flying all over the world. She leaves the job at the end because she wants to meet children in the daytime, so that leaves another vacancy for another fairy to come in. And I have to tell you about that. Remind me to tell you about that. I went to a school on World Book Day, and they asked me to come in as the author, and I thought, oh well, I'll go and do my authoring as I usually do on World Book Day. And they told me to sit in the audience. And I said, oh, okay. I thought I was the guest, but never mind. And I sat in the audience, and the children had taken the book over. And they made all their teachers dress and apply for the job of the Tooth Fairy because there was a vacancy. And that is when the children take the books. When you go to them in the first place, then they take it. And the children came, and I came in, and I said, and the children were sitting there interviewing the teachers. Boy, you should see some funny wings, some wobbly wigs. The teachers all fell into it, dressed to get the job as the leader. Yes. And it was amazing. And one of the children was sitting there interviewing and taking notes, about 6 or 7 children with the head teacher at the top. And the teachers were coming, come in, Miss Cunningham. She comes in, she's got her wings on that she'd made herself, and she said, Miss Cunningham, why are you applying for this job? The first child asked. He said, because I eat my carrots. And I can see in the dark. And then the next one came, he said, okay, you go next. They go, come in, Miss Jones. Why have you applied for this job, Miss Jones? Did the children? She said, because I think I'll be good at it. And the child looked at her and she said, but do you like children, Miss Jones?
Oh, good question.
Touche. It was absolutely amazing what was going on. And that is when you know you're onto something good, because the children then take the stories. They own them. And then I went to a white school. This was in a multicultural school, and I went to a white school, and with this David the Tooth Fairy book as the author and all of that. And one little white boy said to me, I gotta have that book. I can't buy that book. So I said, why? Why do you want it? Because any reason? He said, because it made my teacher laugh, and I never seen her laugh before. It was amazing. But shockingly, the day after this thing, when I did the thing and the boy said he wanted the book because it made the teacher laugh, some of the white parents, a couple of white parents brought the books back and said, we gave the child money because there was an author visiting and the child brought the wrong book.
No. Oh my gosh.
So there's a downside to all of this. But there's the upside is so much better because the children are in charge. And we see the adults' prejudices coming out. It's been... I talk too much.
No, you've got decades of experience that we need to hear. We need to hear it because people will look and just see the exterior, see all these books and everything else, and anyone who remotely understands publishing, and publishing does not make an attempt really, despite numerous reports saying how opaque it is. you know, there's still a lot of people who don't understand what publishing is, and those are people who want to actually get their books published. So it's far from being too much. And I want to now go to another book that was for children called Giant Hiccups, which sounds, the title alone, about a black female giant called Aisha.
Yes.
By Jackie Farley. And what's interesting...
Yes. And Jackie's a white
Jackie's
writer.
a white writer.
A white writer.
Yeah, so, and he was concerned about, because it didn't start off as a black giant, did it? The giant wasn't necessarily...
She sent the book to Tamarind and said she wanted, because I was a new publisher, and she written a book about a female giant. And she thought that was amazing, so she came to Tamarind. So I said, well, yeah, that's brilliant, because she doesn't fee 4 5 fum, no, does she? That's not nice. It's fee 4 5 fumming business. And so she said, yes, she makes rainbow lollipops and pineapple jam, and she's a female. So I said, you realize if it's a Tamarind book, it's going to be a black giant. And she said, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And I said, well, all the main characters in Tamarind books are black. And she said, oh. And she left the manuscript with me, but she went around the bookshops looking for books with black characters. And she didn't find any. She went all down the Charing Cross Road, she went everywhere, and she didn't find any. She came back, she said, Verna, Aisha, and the giant is a black woman. I could see what you mean. And that was a white writer. And I just published Blind, as long as the book has got the black characters, and I work with it. And we sent the text to Pamela Venus to do the illustrations. And we had to send her fabrics, pieces of fabric from African kente cloth and bits and pieces, so she could dress the black giant accordingly. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but and this was I made friends with that illustrator for life, because she did my grandson. It was amazing.
Also, you did Black Profiles series.
Oh, right.
And I remember the Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yes.
You mentioned about Stephen Lawrence.
Yes. Well, Doreen Lawrence approached me because I was just doing picture books for the early years, and the teachers saying, "Look, Verna, you drop them off at. It's not my job. Why are you talking to me?" She said, "The kids have all they read all your picture books. You want for slightly older." So I decided to do the Black Profiles and the Black Stars. So these were successful black people. And then Doreen Lawrence heard what I was doing, and she arranged for me to have a meeting with her up in London somewhere. And I met her, and she said, "I want you to write my story." I said, "Doreen, I don't do grown-up stuff. I just do children. I'm so sorry. I didn't know why you wanted to meet me. I thought you wanted to publish something for children." She said, "No, I wanted you to write my story." And I said, No, I can't write grown-up stuff. But would you do me the privilege of writing about the life of your son? Because all the publicity out there is about his death. And you know, he lived for 18 years, and nobody knew what they'd done, who they murdered. He was dead from everything, nothing about his life. And you know, Doreen and I used to meet in Martin, in St. Martin, in the crypt. Where is it?
St. Martin
in the crypt. We used to meet there, and walking from Charing Cross Station to the crypt to go and have our meeting, people used to be pointing at her. And she, you know, and Doreen, she was with me. And I would take notes. She gave me all his baby pictures. And the life of Stephen Lawrence, and those are all his baby pictures. And then she gave me a t-shirt. And she said he ran a marathon with this for a children's hospital, because he did a lot of social work. And she said he ran this marathon. Keep this t-shirt with you while you're doing Stephen's life. And we sat in the crypt and cried. And this book was junior education. This book has gone on and on and on. It's got a lot of awards, and it says Stephen Lawrence was a bright, athletic young man with high hopes for the future. He lived in southeast London with both his parents, one younger brother and sister. On April 22nd, 1993, he was brutally murdered while he was waiting for the bus. He was 18 years old. This is the story of his life. He will be remembered. And Junior Education, who does a lot of educational material for schools, they read it, did a review and said, a landmark in children's publishing, and treats tragedy with sensitivity and a quiet dignity. The text is powerful, non-fiction at its best. It should be required reading for every primary school child. Junior Education. And they put it in, and that is why the book sold, because Junior Education was doing it. Because the book ended at the end, and we did work. The BBC came to the school with me once, and they did the book, and the book ends. Stephen didn't know his killers, and his killers didn't know him.
I want to just have a...
Yes, Stephen didn't know his killers. And that is when the children say, but why? And that's when you dig into racism. Why? And the children are asking why. And that is why Anne founders from Junior Education said it should be used in schools, because the children ask the questions. Right?
I picked a comment that was in YouTube under one of your videos, and it's one of the more recent ones.
Yes.
And someone from America, because obviously your work and your activism, I'll come to that, has been international. So it says, "Thank you, Miss Wilkins. I'm a teacher and your books are a breath of fresh air. I'm a mother and your books are quite literally lifesavers. I am white, my child is African American. She needed caps to see herself in books. She needed caps to see herself as a fairy or whatever else she wanted to be. Thank you." So again, about what you did, it sounds are doing, it's almost like I've got a mission, because when you think about how you just seem to flow into these different elements and different demands, the fact that this book is so successful, and Doreen came up to you and said,
yes,
you know, and you had to pivot. You said, no, pivot to...
I can't.
And so you came out of your comfort zone and did something so successful. I mean, people are going on creative writing courses and not getting to the point where you have.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, you must wonder about how much of this, you know, about being guided in a way, because
yes,
it's been, everything you've touched has made a mark.
I guess.
I mean, it must have been scary as well, because I don't want to make it sound all. It's not glamorous. It's a lot of hard work, and you were playing all the roles.
But it didn't feel like hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a lot of fun. I did have a lot of fun because I went to Zimbabwe, worked there, did some stuff, went to Uganda twice, and most of the Caribbean animals, Caribbean islands, Caribbean animals. That was a book title. Most of the Caribbean islands, I did their exhibitions and I did stuff. And I actually wrote a book about Abdi's Day. It's not. Is it Abdi? No.
I'm coming to that.
Yes, a book. Yeah, in Uganda, because the big publishers here send all their excess books as a sort of, like they sent blankets to the Caribbean when we had a hurricane, and we think we don't want warm blankets, it's hot, but we got blankets. So they were sending a lot of white books to Uganda, and the teachers were putting them away, and the books had white children in them. And when I went into Uganda, and we weren't in the city, we weren't in Kampala, we were in the 3 hours inland, and I took the books out, and the kids were interested, so I wrote a book. But I said, you have to tell me, what is your life like in Uganda? Do you, what is your house like? What's the door? What's your bed like? How do you sleep? I had to learn from the children in Uganda what their life was about before I could write. So they were teaching me. And that was absolutely amazing, very empowering for the children. And then to see all these books with children. And one of I went on an education conference, and one of the teachers came up to me. He said, "You did this? Oh yes." I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, you look like us." I said, "I am African." I know, and you know, well, you look like us. But they were so used to getting in all the excess stuff over printing and, you know, from the white publishers here, which they thought they were doing the right thing, giving books away. But the undercurrent was that it, you know?
And I just wanted, before I hand over to see if there's any questions, just how, you know, this, another element about listening to you about why I think there was this flow, and I suppose why it was so much fun for you. You were in education, you like children.
Yes.
And children will pick that up. And you treated them like they had imagination, they had their own agency.
And I could learn from them.
Right, and I think then also the level at which the books were pitched. And also, it's almost like there is nothing they can't do, including produce their own books, which I know the Ugandan project was partially about. And I just think that makes a huge difference when you actually have an interest in those who the books will end up with. Yeah.
And I tell you, I went to a school in Ealing, and I did a what's in a book. And I piloted my books in school, so sometimes when I had an idea, I made notes and took them into the school, and the children filled me in and I put them down. And then I went back with my corrections. And the children said, "You got to do corrections," because I think authors just sit down and just write books and send them out. No, I have to do corrections. The book started off like this, and look what I changed. And they could see me scratching things out and doing things, and they have to do corrections. So I said, yes, but the teacher doesn't criticize mine. But the teachers tell them, "You've got to do corrections." I said, "I have to do corrections. You have to do corrections. End of." And then I have to ask an illustrator to draw the pictures, and I have to work with them. And sometimes I have to scratch out my words because she drew the pictures to cover, you know. So it's don't beat yourself up. And I spoke at this school, and there was a little girl. It was a mixed school. There were Indians, black children, white children, all national in this school. And at the end of the session, there was this little girl. She never took her eyes off me, and her mouth was half open half the time. So I said, did you want to say something to me in the end? And she said, I write stories. I like to read and I write stories. But I didn't know I could, she was 10 years old. I didn't know I could be an author until I saw you today. I didn't know. And I took with me Samantha, because I was doing Samantha Truss, her life story. I started writing now for the black profiles, like for Stephen, for Samantha Truss. And I wrote, I picked successful black people and wrote their biographies. And I said, I have to find out from somebody, if I'm doing a biography about them, they have to tell me the story, and then I have to write a story. So you could do a biography on your mom or your dad or your grandma, somebody. Let her tell you what happened, and you write it down, and then you make a story around that. That's what I do. So I took Samantha in with me, and she was a doctor in Ealing Hospital. And I took her in with me because I was writing her life story. And she came in, so she said, and she is beautiful. She looks like a influencer, is that what they are? Or an affluencer? I don't know. I keep getting it wrong. And she came in with me, stunning looking black woman from Guyana. And she came in beautifully dressed. I brought a sample book too. And I said, they didn't know. I said, I'm doing a biography on somebody. I want her. She came in. Here she is, and she arrived. I said, can you guess what her job is? A hairdresser, a beautician, a teacher, a nurse. And she said, I said, Samantha, would you tell them what your job is? This is in Ealing. She said, I'm a consultant orthopedic surgeon at Ealing Hospital. And they just, really? Yes. Well, what's an orthopedic surgeon? She said, I can tell you. When I am ready to go to the theater and I'm all masked up and ready to work, in my I've got a saw, I've got a hammer, some screws. You said you were an orthopedic surgeon. She said, yes, because I've got to chop legs off and take hips out and put new hips in. She had those children, they forgot all about me and me writing. They went to Samantha. And a few weeks ago, she was made, she is at the highest point of her profession that any surgeon in England could get there because of the royal seal and all that. She's got it. And she's still in Ealing Hospital as top. 99% of the people working with her, beside her, are men, because orthopedics is a male concern, right? So why would I complain? I'm getting all this excitement. You know, you get the children, you get meeting people. So I did a whole list of them. I did Benjamin Zephaniah as well, and Mallory Blackman. And it's a fantastic life to write. It really is. Writing is so wonderful. Bit lonely sometimes, but if you get out there and do other things, if you go to schools and exhibitions and conferences and so, you could have a life. And you could go and talk to the kids. Random House headhunted me at the point when I was absolutely washed out. I had done 32 years and I was just burnt out. And they headhunted me and said, if you could do this off your kitchen table, think of us, we're international, we could, well.
Yeah, exactly what's happening.
And that was 2007.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's the thing though, isn't it, about that whole acquisition model. You do all the work, and rather than say, look, where do you want it to go? What would help get it to where it needs to be? And I think that lack of care is a huge issue. You started all this in the 80s.
Yes.
But anyone who came, you know, if we had Dr. Kuti come from the past here as Doctor Who, he'd be thinking, are you talking about the 1950s, 1940s?
Yes,
oh no, the 1980s.
Yeah.
So just to say a bit about the so-called, you know, progress, but it's like 3 steps forward, 10 steps backwards, just using children's books as an example. In the representation of people of colour among children's book creators in the UK by Professor Melanie Ramdarshan-Bold, okay, revealed that 11.7% of children book creators in 2021 were people of colour compared to 4% in 2007, and she's the one who's done the research on that. Then the Book Trust Represents School Support Evaluation Report found that representation in children's books and their creators has a critical impact on children's wider learning experiences and development in the classroom and beyond. So that's 2022.
Yes, 2022.
Then hang on. Then, so it's like, oh, it's edging slow progress. Then we had COVID, George Floyd's murder, and you know, there was a lot of interest in black books by black authors. Then now we're looking fast forward a couple of years to November 2024. The Centre for Literacy in Primary Education, CLPE's Reflecting Realities report reveals a decline in racially minoritised characters in children's books. So a backslide, which Ramdarshan-Bold suggests diversity in children's publishing may have been treated as a checkbox rather than a sustained commitment. And I know she's been really tactful. You know what I mean? That was the official. It's may and allegedly and right. So I mean, hearing that, I mean, there's good news, but on another side.
Yes.
But I'm just curious about how you feel then about, you know, like you said, you were burnt out and everything else. Hand it over because you know it's an opportunity for it to be international. You've done all the hard work.
So just take it and I supported. I went in and tried to embed it, into the system. But there's the direct. There's the publishing is a thing on its own. It's the direct the woman in charge of children's publishing, and then somebody in charge of YA, and then etc. But they've got a budget, and they've got you're given £2,000 at the beginning of the year, and that's your budget, and you expand that, and your promotion and all that is wrapped up in how well you've done. So, it's so. I mean, one of the women brought in a very good book, and they told her to take it to finance before it even touched the editor or touched, this is good, it needs to be done. Take it to finance. The finance woman has no idea about content and all that, but she looked at a history. We tried this before, it didn't work. She too has her budget to take care of, because her promotion is. Her credibility is wrapped up in that. It's not simple on the outside. I stayed in Random House, sort of trying to embed it, and in the end I thought, you know what? I can't take any more of this. It'll destroy me. I was all right on my own, doing what I had to do. I can't take this. But they were lovely people. They were good people. But publishing is about risk and money. That's it.
Just to say, even though you did all that, you set up Fire Tree Books in 2016. I'm just going to, right. So you did that start. Was a collaborative, which I think just really is a thread through even what you said. Everyone felt they were co-producing this Tamarind with you. So it was you, but you were just being supported, engaged, because you were asking people questions, you were interested. So you did that, and then you also managed to find time to write an essay for New Daughters of Africa, edited by Margaret Busby in 2019. As someone who wasn't planning to be necessarily an author, a publisher, a business person, entrepreneur, a literary activist, what do you think makes a good publisher?
Be unfettered by reality. honestly. And that was my son who said it. Because if I were looking at, I have to see a publisher, I've got to see a printer, I would have been still sitting in my garage. Right? But I went out there and I learned what is going on, why are you doing this, what is it, what are you going to use it for, what. Open your mind, just open up, and don't be closed in on, I've got to do a book, or I've got to write a book, I've got to, no. It was just about learning, and I learned, and everything I can share with you today, I learned. Because as you say, I was a reluctant publisher, a reluctant bookseller, a reluctant speaker. My son told me to stop reluctant and just get on. But you just learn, open up, and be more, receptive. And I sat back and learned, and if there's anything I can do, I would still do it and support others. But there's a lot of talent sitting in those classrooms, I tell you. You could learn from children more than you can learn from adults. And publishing is about risk and money. End of. I still, after being 30 years a publisher, I still do not know what publishing is. Not a clue. And that's where the lack of reality comes in. Yes.
I met Verna 16 years ago when I joined Tamarind as commissioning editor. She had blown into the publishing industry like an unstoppable tornado, building her little corner of the publishing empire from the ground up into a sustainable and successful business. When mainstream publishers were talking about exploring new routes to market, Verna had long before trodden new ground to find and successfully sell into them. While mainstream publishers dithered and discussed and continued to misunderstand the true meaning of the word multicultural, Verna was producing books where the characters reflected all the children who, if given the opportunity, would absolutely read them. While mainstream publishers dwelled on single narratives, Verna published stories about the universal experiences of all children. She cleared the trail so others could follow and continues to be an inspiration to me. And I think you've inspired all of us tonight, Verna.
Well, I hope I
So,
have.